Well, one thing I really like about Britain is, like every regulators, politicians, they mess up and they make mistakes, and it happens all over the world. But the British are really good at stepping up. They resign. If you've done very badly, you're a minister or head of something, and just things go badly on your watch, even if it arguably wasn't from, they resign. So I'll just resign. And Japanese do too. And someone takes their place. In America, we act like nothing's wrong. Nobody resigns. Nobody takes responsibility. I would have said Jay Powell, Michael Barr, who's the vice chairman of the Federal Reserve for supervision. So he's the guy who wears the regulatory hat. Powell's the chairman. And Mary Daly, who's the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. Why haven't all three of them resigned or been fired? This was not arcane. You can get into derivatives and crazy off-balance sheet structures, and very few people understand it. You don't see it coming. Okay, that's true. But this was simple. These were 97% uninsured deposits ready to run out the door with massive bond losses. They were in like 30-year bonds, 10-year notes to 30-year bonds. It wasn't like you had treasury bills. So you can always sell a treasury bill and maybe take a little hickey, but not really. So you can have a government security, which is a treasury, almost no credit risk. I won't say none, but there's always market risk. But the thing about treasury bills, 3-month bills or 6-month bills, there's very little market risk. They're not volatile. But when you're into 30-year bonds, forget it. You can take 20-point hits when you get the kind of interest rates we see, and that's what they had. And they put them in this held to maturity account, HTM, held to maturity. Means, yeah, we own them, but we're going to hold them for 30 years, and so therefore you don't have to mark them to market. Except if you sell them, if you sell one because you got a run on the bank, you got to mark them all to market right then, and that's what this Fed facility was about. The CEO sold over $3 million worth of stock about 10 days before the collapse. Now he says, it was according to a pre-filed plan with the SEC, so it wasn't in response to any news or whatever. What do you have to understand? There are such things, but these pre-filed plans can be part of the scam. In other words, I see it coming, so I'm going to file a plan so I can keep selling my stock. And then if I get accused of insider trading, I'll go, oh, it was all according to plan. Well, who's to say that the plan wasn't part of the scam? And that's the kind of stuff that was going on. The CFO sold a lot of stock. So that's certainly going to be investigated. But my point is, a bright high school kid with a spreadsheet could have seen this coming. Assets, liabilities, huge uninsured deposits, about $125 billion of uninsured deposits ready to flee, and a comparable amount, slightly more, of the most volatile, government securities, okay, but extremely volatile, not that liquid in a crisis. That's all you had to look at. So where were the regulators? Where were the supervisors? And they said, well, we sent them a bunch of letters. It wasn't. If anything, it made it worse, because okay, you actually knew about it and didn't do anything. It'd be one thing if you never went over and knocked on the door, but you did. You saw something extremely risky. You sent them a letter and then didn't do anything. And again, this, it's amazing how Washington works. Mary Daly, I mentioned her, she's president of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. She was on the short list to be nominated to the Board of Governors in Washington to fill the seat that Lael Brainerd left. Lael Brainerd was a member of the Board of Governors. I believe she was vice chairman. But she left to go to the White House in the National Economic Council. But that's an audition for Secretary of the Treasury, because they're going to throw Yellen under the bus. Yellen knows nothing. If Yellen were on this call right now, she wouldn't know anything we're talking about. When she was chairman of the Fed, I said she was incompetent, and I was right. And then she became Secretary of the Treasury. She's a statistics geek from Berkeley, but her specialty as an economist was labor economics. Okay, well, there's a place for that, but not as U.S. Treasury Secretary. She didn't know monetary policy of the Fed. She doesn't know fiscal policy of the Treasury. There's nothing about international economics, and that gets us into the role of the dollar. She was like her husband won a Nobel Prize. Okay, George Akerlof. I know a lot of her close associates. If you don't want to say affirmative action, you can say the Peter Principle, which, this goes back to the 60s. But the Peter Principle is you get in a bureaucracy and you do a good job and they give you a promotion. And then you keep doing a good job and they give you another promotion. And you keep doing a good job. And eventually you get promoted to something where you're incompetent. You're in over your head and you fail, but then you stay there because you're not getting another promotion. And so the result is bureaucracies are populated with incompetent people because they've all risen to their level of incompetence and have nowhere else to go. I would say she got there at the Fed, how she got another chance at Treasury, but that's the answer. But Lael Brainerd, I'll say, is more talented, and hopefully she'll be So they'll throw Yellen under the bus, blame her. That's, by the way, that's the Biden technique: deflection and denial and just blaming other people. So they'll blame her for the whole thing. But Mary Daly was on the short list to fill Brainerd's seat at the Fed. Well, you can forget that she can't get to a hearing at this point. But she was running around on, climate change, social justice, George Floyd, BLM. And again, free country, you want to express a view, be my guest, but not as chief regulator of Silicon Valley Bank. This is where there's a lack of creativity. It's kind of all or nothing. It's like, if this fails, we're going to have a wave of failures of startups in Silicon Valley. Well, that's probably true. Probably true. Most of these things fail anyway. A couple of winners here and there. Well, how difficult would it have been? So now you're the entrepreneur. You had $5 million of working capital, which you got in a round, an angel round or whatever from some venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. You got some premises, you got a payroll, you got some developers, you got employees, all that stuff. And now your cash is frozen. Not just frozen, but gone. You got to go Yang money, you got a due bill from the FDIC. Now, who's to say if those companies were well run and they actually had some good technology, how difficult would it have been to make a few phone calls and say, you know what, we're stuck in this thing. I need a 2-year bridge loan, or I need a 1-year bridge loan, and I'll collateralize it by the proceeds of my receivership certificate. And as and when I get paid, I'll pay down the loan. We can have a simultaneous closing. All good. You could have got money. Some of those firms could have got money. Some of them not. Maybe some layoffs. Maybe they would have failed, but most of them do anyway. I mean, that's my first point. But that was not the majority of, and unemployment would have gone up. I mean, I'm not saying that there are no hardships, but we gloss over the greater hardships on the economy as a whole. And that gets to the other lie, which was Janet Yellen coming out and saying, there's no cost to the taxpayer. Like, wait a second. Because you mentioned the bailout of the Fed taking the loans at market value and giving them par value, which is more for 1 year, and glossed over that whole thing. But there was a separate bailout, which is the FDIC guaranteed every penny of every deposit in all those banks. Well, when you look at the numbers, you have grossly depleted the insurance fund. The FDIC is an insurance company. That's what the I stands for. And they have reserves, just like every other insurance company. They charge premiums. That's how they go. This would have basically wiped out the reserves. So how are you going to top up the reserves in the FDIC for future bank failures? Well, they said, we're going to raise premiums on the banks. Okay, they are. But what do the banks do? Well, they're going to either pay you less interest or charge you fees. In other words, the bank isn't just going to sit there and write checks to the FDIC and watch their P&L evaporate. They're going to pass the cost on to the customer, which is us, which is the American people. So does your tax bill go up? No, but your interest rate's going down, or your banking fees are going up. So the cost is shifted to everyday Americans. So don't tell me that we're not paying the bill, because we are. So again, these are in the nature of government lies to kind of, disguise what they're actually doing.